underneath the moisture barrier, we are actually collecting moisture, and it's causing bacteria to grow as well as mold, creating a really nasty situation. Looks like some old mushrooms that have been growing. And then the ductwork has extensive mold growth on it, again due to condensation. All the ductwork is just heavily covered in mold growth. There's mold up on the subfloor. Not a lot, but pretty much everywhere. The dryer vent line at one time was disconnected, put a whole bunch of lint down in here. And there's actually mold growing on top of the moisture barrier. Here is the access panel to the coil, and we can see that there's mold growth inside here. They did put in a ultraviolet light. It is in the right spot. The penetrations are not sealed, so we're pulling in outside air. And there's a lot of mold out here that's getting sucked into the system.
The grade of the home is a challenge in that water is pooling in front of the crawl space. This also makes it attractive for termites. So we don't want water or termites getting into the crawl space. So we install a gravel pit in front of the door. From here I can see how water gets in, and it's been pooling just in front of the crawl space door. Inside the crawl space we have what we call an open vented design, and you can see on the silver ductwork on the left how it's been eroded and the pink is showing. This is a picture just illustrating that the penetrations in the floor are not sealed, so these electrical wires go through a hole that allows air to pass into the home. The moisture barrier itself is not sealed, so that's a problem because underneath it we create a microclimate that supports the roots, bacteria, insects, and mold growth. I believe this is an old, very large mushroom that's died out, probably because of a bacterial attack. Radon is a concern, and it's one reason we have open vented crawl spaces. And where we have cracks or fissures in the soil, this is an area that allows the carcinogenic soil gases to enter the home. You also have natural gas, and that can be a concern. Rarely are there leaks, but if there are, they can cause a lot of symptoms. So it's good to have a combustion meter in the crawl space and house. There is mold growth on numerous surfaces. Example, here is a sewer discharge line that is coated in mold. Also signs of insects eating it off. The crawl space has a lot of debris on the ground, and you can see the ductwork there has a water stain on it. That's because it's actively condensating at this time. On top of the ducts is mold due to the condensation, dust, and pollen that's in the crawl space. That is a lot of mold, and I would expect these types to be in the home, probably Aspergillus, Penicillium, Cladosporum. The ducts are not run professionally. Sloppy, loose, choke points, so it's an inefficient system. The air handler now has a whole house filter added to it, April Air makes a nice product. Filter should be looked at probably every 6 months. You may get a year of use out of it. The condensation pump should not be buried into the ground. If there is an overflow, you would never know it. It would just make a mess, because I did not see a safety turnoff. There is a UV light that's on the system, so care must be taken when it is opened. I did not see a kill switch for the UV light. Good news is the UV light is positioned in the right place in regards to irradiating the coil where mold has a tendency to grow. Here's where they cut access for putting in the light, and there's a lot of condensation on this, so apparently there's no insulation under it, or at least not enough. This is the plumbing access points into the air handler, and you can see how they're not sealed. Those grommets are displaced, so we're just sucking mold into the air handler. On the right is the UV light, and it's irradiating that coil, and that's good. But on the far left, there's mold that is growing in the system. There at the bottom you can see the mold. So it's kind of silly to have mold in the system but yet go to the trouble of putting in a UV light. So that just needs to be cleaned up. We are researching this product. It's an air sensor product, and it's telling us that there's a high particulate load in the crawl space. In the attic, there's a need for an attic ladder cover. The air ducts are gray. The new coat is for foil, so they reflect the heat. These have an R value of 4.2, whereas the new ducts have an R value of 8. This is the return box, and the system is not sealed. So we're pulling in attic air into the HVAC system. Granted, it's being filtered, but it's not good to contaminate the ductwork with air from the crawl space or the attic. On the supply side, it also leaks. So we're losing about 20% of our conditioned air to the attic and the crawl space. So every time it runs, that's 20 cents on the dollar that you're losing. Plus it pulls in these contaminants now to the supply side of the system. We don't want debris in that supply side because it'll spread it throughout the home, and perhaps mold can grow in the ductwork. Be nice to have enough insulation that covered all this ductwork, so you'd add more insulation to the attic and get a double bang for your buck. This rust in the boot should not be there. That shows that there's been some water issues, and it's not in just one. Also notice the gap on the floor. So here's an area where crawl space air is able to get into the home. So now that we have 2 boots and supply registers that are rusted, it indicates that there's been or still may be some humidity issues with this system. This duct looks relatively clean. That rust should have been dealt with. You can see it's still kind of chipping. Should have been brushed and treated with paint. Here, this duct has not been cleaned efficiently. You can see rust and possibly mold in the system or in this air duct. Downstream of the filter return is a duct line box. You can see the discoloration and the damaged fiberglass liner. Sure be nice if that was resurfaced and repaired so we don't get fiberglass in the system. And then looking down that return duct, we can see that it also was not effectively cleaned. Under the kitchen sink, there's a main shutoff valve that is leaking. That is leaking underneath the cabinet, and we suspect that there's mold underneath that cabinet and that should be taken up and remediated. And the home will be significantly better. Thank you for the opportunity to be of service.